deal with our oligarch problem. And, you know, I start out by telling the story of Viktor Medvedchuk. He was the Rupert Murdoch of Ukraine. He was a billionaire oligarch who owned a right-wing television network and a whole bunch of TV stations, along with a bunch of other businesses in Ukraine. And his TV network was constantly spewing hate and division, and he was, you know, he owned a bunch of politicians and was promoting tax cuts for the rich and all this kind of stuff, right? I mean, just an incredible parallel. And then came Vladimir Zelensky. Zelensky ran for president of Ukraine and won on an anti-oligarch, anti-corruption platform. And last year, it became law in the first week of June of last year, of 2022. Zelensky passed a law to strip oligarchs of their ability to influence elections in Ukraine. Yes, you heard that right. He did the same thing that Teddy Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt did. I mean, it was just incredible. They call it de-oligarchization. Seriously, this is not a word I made up. It's what they call their law, the de-oligarchization law of Ukraine. And basically what they're saying is, you know, we don't have a problem with you being rich in Ukraine, and we don't have a problem with you having a political opinion. But if you use your riches to get what you want politically, that's wrong. That's now a crime. And, you know, and what Zelensky said, in fact, when he rolled out this law, May 18th, 2021, he said, in order to succeed, Ukraine must become a rule of law democracy that works in the interest of the many rather than the few. He said, in order to realize our potential, we must create a fair and functional system that protects the rights of the entire population rather than just safeguarding the interests of the oligarchs. Our ultimate objective, this is the president of Ukraine saying this a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, saying our ultimate objective is to destroy the traditional oligarchic order and replace it with a fairer system that will allow Ukraine to flourish. Now, under this law that they passed in Ukraine that went into effect in June of last year, it was passed in 2021, Ukrainian is by definition an oligarch if they meet 3 out of the 4 following criteria. Number 1, they have a net worth greater than $89 million. Number 2, they have significant, in quotes, influence over mass media. Number 3, they control a business that exercises monopoly influence over part of the economy. And number 4, they involve themselves in politics through funding politicians, political parties, political campaigns, or think tanks. In other words, do they, quote, take part in political life? If they do, if they meet 3 out of those 4 criteria, then number 1, they're included on the official register of Ukrainian oligarchs published by the government. Number 2, they may not run for political office. They may not fund political parties, and they may not have any influence over any meaningful part of Ukrainian political life. Number 3, they may not purchase any state assets that are privatized. They're still in the process of privatizing a lot of the old Soviet-era stuff. Number 4, they must disclose their assets, and this is where I first learned about this. Was the Financial Times had a piece about this, and they called these exhaustive declarations. And number 5, government officials are now required in Ukraine to report any meeting with any oligarch. Just lunch, you got to report it. Clarence Thomas, you want to go on vacation, you got to report it. Now, we once had a similar tradition here in the United States. In fact, Americans want this right now. When Donald Trump was running for president, you will recall during the Republican primary, in one of the debates, he came out and he was talking about the oligarchs, which is kind of ironic because he's one himself, but he said he was speaking of Jeb Bush and the other Republicans on the stage, and he said they'll be bombarded by their lobbyists that donated a lot of money to them. Again, Jeb raised $107 million, okay? They're not putting that money up because it's a wonderful charity. Well, it's a charity, but for them, not for America. And, you know, and he goes on to his rant about this and says he's going to deal with the oligarch problem. He's going to raise taxes so much that his friends are going to hate him. Well, of course, he didn't do that. He cut taxes on billionaires. But, you know, Donald Trump was always lying through his teeth. But the fact of the matter is that millions and millions of people voted for him because they thought he was going to de-oligarchize America. We had laws like this on the books. In 1907, we had the Tillman Act, which made it a federal crime for any wealthy executive of a large corporation to give any money or support to any candidate for federal office. But states had laws like this too. The Wisconsin law, for example, this was actually on the books in Wisconsin until the Supreme Court overturned it. I'll just read it to you. There's 2 sentences. No corporation doing the business in this state shall pay or contribute or offer consent or agree to pay or contribute, directly or indirectly, any money, property, free service of its officers or employees or thing of value to any political party, organization, committee, or individual for any political purpose whatsoever, or for the purpose of influencing legislation of any kind, or to promote or defeat the candidacy of any person for nomination, appointment, or election to any political office. Now, what were the penalties for this? Any, quote, any officer, employee, agent, or attorney, or other representative of any corporation who shall violate this act shall be punished upon conviction by imprisonment in the state prison for a period of not less than 1 nor more than 5 years. And if a domestic corporation, it may be dissolved. And if a foreign or non-resident corporation, its right to do business in this state may be declared forfeit. This is the kind of law we need to bring back. This is the kind of law we had in America for 100 years until 5 corrupt Republicans on the U.S. Supreme Court blew it up. And by the way, the deciding vote in Citizens United was Clarence Thomas. And this was after he had developed his relationship with Harlan Crow, an American oligarch. After that law was struck down and all the others by Citizens United and its predecessors, the following states had to strike down laws that were very similar to the one that I just read you from Wisconsin. They included Alaska, Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Iowa, Kentucky, Minnesota, Montana, North Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, West Virginia, and, as I read to you, Wisconsin. So, you know, we need to be doing the same thing. We need to bring this back. We need to end the oligarch control of American politics and American media. And it can be done. Now, the biggest challenge, of course, is going to be blowing up the Supreme Court's, you know, this corrupt Citizens United decision where Clarence Thomas was the deciding vote done by 5 corrupt Republicans. Now, Congress has the ability to do that unambiguously. Article 3, Section 2 gives Congress the right to regulate the Supreme Court and to create exceptions to what the Supreme Court may rule on. It's not even something that's up for debate. The question is, do we have enough votes to get it through Congress? We had a piece of legislation that would have done much of this, that would have reversed much of Citizens United, and that would have stripped a lot of big political money out of politics. It was called the For the People Act, H.R. 1. And it passed the House of Representatives, and when it got to the Senate, it had 50 votes in the Senate plus the vice president, and it would have become law if the Republicans had not filibustered it. But then the Republicans filibustered it, and then, you know, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema refused to go along with all the other Democrats in blowing up that filibuster. So here we are. What do? Well, the only thing we can do. We have an election coming up in a year and a half, and we need to get everybody we know registered to vote. Get them registered to vote, get them active, get them aware, wake them the hell up. And from here, you know, with this, we might be able to take our country back from the oligarchs. We are more of an oligarchy than we have ever been in our history. 3 men in America own more wealth than the bottom half of Americans. I mean, let that sink in. And they're using that money to make sure that they never again have to pay more than 3.1% in income taxes. That's the effective income tax rate right now for American oligarchs. We got to do something.